All right, we are live. Welcome, coaches. We're just getting everything up. Didn't mean to do that. Prepared right now. Here we go. Let's see. All right. Gotta love technology. There we go. All right. Coaches, welcome. I am here with the great Coach Dub Maddox. Let me get that. Coach, while I'm doing all the technical stuff, for those coaches that don't know who you are and been living under a rock and haven't read any football books or have gone to any Glazier clinics or listened to any football podcast, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, man?
Yeah, offensive coordinator at Union High School in Oklahoma. I've been coaching going on my 20th year now. I also am a co-owner in the QB Collective Academy, and formerly known as NFA. We had a recent merger with some great guys that are heavily connected to the NFL, and developed R4. The R4 football system started in 2007 with that, and originally it was created as a reads and recognition progression system for quarterbacks. And over time, that has evolved to a decision-making and game planning, play calling, and run game as well for coaches, and in a way to bring a staff and a team together with one same mind and same language. So a lot of stuff there.
Okay. Well, first off, let me congratulate you on the QB Collective and y'all merging and doing that. When I saw that, I was like, oh, man, that is freaking awesome. So congratulations, because I know you've been working really hard on that.
Yeah. No, it's a pretty unique opportunity. It gives us a direct bridge with the best coaches in the NFL, and also a way to get those quarterbacks on the high school level at the top of their game to get them NFL ready and give them the characteristics and the intangibles they need to take it to the highest level. So it's going to be fun.
All right. Well, coaches, thank you so much for joining us. Here's how we do it. I asked earlier for any questions that you had for Coach Dub Maddox, y'all put them in the comments. I literally copied and pasted them. I shared them with them. We're going to answer your questions. Also, if you have any questions while we're talking, please put them in the comments below, Coach. We already have 52 coaches watching right now, and they are super excited. So let's just get the ball rolling, okay? So the very first question I got that jumped out at me, you are known as the quarterback guru. What is one thing you look for in quarterback? Like the one thing you look for in your quarterbacks?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm a quarterback guru, man. I think if you're a guru, you've learned it all, and I still got a lot to learn. But I appreciate that. But anyway, man, I think the number one thing that your quarterback has to be able to do, if you just had to say, if boil it down to one thing, it has to make decisions under pressure. I think that's a non-negotiable. If your kid can throw, he could have good character, he could be a good athlete, but if he can't make decisions under pressure, he's going to have to be moved to another position. So that would be my one thing.
Okay, and to build onto that question, how do you test that?
Well, you got to put them in pressure situations early. I think some of the mistakes I made early in my career is you'll have that. I mean, this happens all the time. You'll have that quarterback that looks great in 7-on-7. You'll have the guy that can answer the questions in the classroom. He looks good in practice, but when you put 11 guys in there and you cut the cord, you find out real quick that what a kid cannot do. And so I think that you have to create those environments in practice. You have to do your best as a coach, and you have to know how to juggle that. I mean, we grew up in our era of coaching, and we were coached hard, and coaches, they were a lot more intense. And I think, whether it was good or bad, it was a different environment when we played football. You really can't get away with that these days, in my opinion. You have to be more, build more bridges with young men. They're smarter. They know more. The technology allows them to access information just like you. So you have to be on top of your game, but you also have to be able to know when to turn the switch on, put the pressure on, but also come back behind them and build them up. So long story short here, I think you got to create pressure environments. You got to put some stakes in the game early in practice, or having competition at that position is really helpful. But anything you can do right there to find out how he can handle that pressure is going to be valuable, or you don't have to wait till week 1 or 2 to find out.
Yeah, when you're finding out, then your offense is in a world of trouble.
Correct.
We talked about this earlier. You brought it up. Perfect segue. Technology. Uh, Tell us what you're using with Madden and how you're using that to help your quarterbacks actually understand football better.
Yeah. So in January, I started a new job at Union High School. It's one of the biggest programs in Oklahoma. Very tradition rich, won numerous state championships, worked for a great head coach and Coach Kirk Frederick. And I had to really accelerate. I mean, we're putting in, so I had to find my quarterback quick, start meet with him and find out what he knows and what he can do. And so we got in our first classroom meeting, and I've had a few, because I was a head coach at a 2A school, Victory Christian, the last 2 years, and was at Jinx High School for 13 years. So in the last 3 years, I've had two unique opportunities to go into two new programs and install R4 and to teach, kids at all different levels, the system. So I tried a different tactic at this school, and I just took my quarterback in, and I wanted to find what he knew first. So I just said, hey, if I say why stick, what does that mean to you? And he goes, well, the tight end runs a 5-yard out. Number 2 receiver is going to run an out route. Number 1 runs a fade. And I was shocked. And I was like, how do you know that? Because they didn't run Y stick in their offense, and because I went and looked through the plays. So how do you know it? He goes, Madden. And I was like, really? And so that gave me some, so I had some, I started looking at Madden. I started thinking out of the box. Well, so started talking to our head coach. I said, hey, does your boys have Madden? Because he has 2 kids. And he's like, yeah, they played all the time. I was like, can we get a console up here? I go, and I started doing some research, and I think I hit you up. I was like, because I saw, the playbooks now have accelerated. I mean, you're seeing the same stuff that the teams run on Saturday. So anyway, I got my hands on some of the material and bought a system and put it in our office and started learn you can create your own playbooks through what the concepts they have with those other teams. You can go in practice mode. You can pull up defensive looks, and you can, have reps at different defensive looks, just over and over and over. So we started using that in the last couple of weeks, and it's been just unbelievable. I can't get the kids out of my office now. I mean, they come in after workouts and play Madden, and I tried to play one of them, and I got absolutely taken to the woodshed. And I'm a competitive guy, so I'm pissed now. And so I've been playing, any break I can get, I'm trying to up my game, and so I can have some credibility around there, because right now it's pretty low.
I understand, man. And like we were talking about earlier, when you did ask me about it, because I'm a big Madden head. I haven't played, and you talked about it, and I was like, crap, I need to get it. So I've been getting it, and I'm playing off the wazoo. All right. So before we get to the next question, just want to say hey to a lot of coaches are here, man. Coach Palmer, Coach Young, Coach Ivory, Coach Williams. What's going on? Coach Vass. Hey, man, I'm sorry. It's not defense. So we can't make defense great again, but we can make offense great.
Coach Vass has been creeping on R4 since 2007, man. That guy, he's the ultimate spy.
We all have, man. Coach Bill, he can't wait for you to be in Arizona next month for the R4 clinic. Coach Nick says, Coach, thank you for being in Minnesota at the Glazier Clinic.
Oh, that's great.
All right, so let's talk about the language, because that is what you're known for. One of the questions is, can you, and how, if you can, do you tie the R4 language to air raid passes like your favorite mesh, or a shallow cross, or 4 verts, or Y cross? Can you do that? And if so, how?
Yeah, I mean, R4 was really when it was developed back in 2006 and 7. We ran a lot of air raid concepts, and so what I found was a challenge at that point was the way air raid was taught is that you had to peek deep to bring the vertical route online for a lot of their concepts, and you can get away with that back then because coverages were more static. But what happened as the game evolved and defenses started getting smarter and starting to use pattern recognition, defenses would use different pre and post snaps look to move coverages, and then also play any kind of little games within those core coverages. You really had to have a post snap process as a quarterback to be able to read the reality of space for those vertical routes. So if you're using R4 and overlaying it, because it is an operating system that works with any offense, if you use it, there's a few components of R4 that allow it to basically bring that vertical rhythm online post snap and still get to the core concept of what the air raid concepts are designed to create. So a couple things we use, with the Y cross and mesh, is we use the rhythm side rule, which means that if you have a rhythm route, a vertical rhythm, and a rush route, in the same side of space, you can essentially use those two routes as a rhythm concept, and you can read both of those routes on the drop, and that allows you to fit the mesh in the check down as a read rush component. Same for Y cross. Y cross, you have a smash to one side, and so you can rhythm that side and then use the Y cross or the post curl as the best read, and then rush the tailback to the field as your rush route. You can also use a rush progression if you wanted to. That's that's basically flipping the progression on its head. And when you use a rush progression, you're elevating a rush route, which in our terminology, that's any kind of quick game route, any flat route. You can elevate that to a rhythm and basically read it low to high. And so for mesh or shallows, we can tag it with a rush progression or make a rush progression signal. And that will tell our quarterback to essentially rhythm the shallow, read the dig, and then rush the backside flat route, whichever you're running there. That's the more traditional way to read shallow, was hot dig, shallow shoot. And so that's another tag you can do. For four verticals, you have to be able to use the two rhythms rule. Anytime, like, because you have, if you're in 2x2 and just running standard four verts, you have two rhythm seams. Well, we make one a lock rhythm, and we make the read seam to the field a read route. And you can get away with coming to a rhythm route off a reset step or throw it later if you have an adjacent vertical beside it to protect it, because if a defensive back is capping one of those, then you're basically resetting to an uncapped on the backside. So that's some things that we've built within R4. We talk about those in Adapt or Die, the book, and which we just released on audiobook. So any of those rules will help you accelerate air raid concepts with R4.
Okay. And that's what I like about the R4, is how you can put that on top of pretty much any offense and have a common language. And that kind of ties into my next one. A lot of coaches have asked, hey, I love the R4. I love what it does, but I run the wing tee or I run the flex bone. Can we still use it? And what do you say to coaches that ask those questions?
Yeah, well, wing tee and flex bone offenses are predominantly run. And so when I became an offensive coordinator in 2010, I understood passing game pretty well. And run game was like Chinese to me. It wasn't, you talk about run game, my eyes would glaze over. It was just boring. It was just a mass of humanity in there, and you couldn't really see what was going on. And I wanted to learn the run game better. And so what we discovered was the same accelerators that we use to make decisions in the passing game and to define space. There was those same accelerator actions that there's those non-negotiables in the run game as well. I mean, there's the boundaries of football are space, time, and talent. So if you know what the boundaries are and the limits, and the primary movements that defenders make to constrict space, then you can create a language and a process that can communicate that reality and therefore allow you to make better decisions. And really the biggest issue was knowing why the play broke down. I mean, that's a big one. So how in 2 to 3 seconds do I know why the play was unsuccessful, and how do I fix it? And so that's where we got into the R4, really complete system, where now it's for run game as well. So there's 4 accelerators in the run game. It's penetration, plug, pin, pursuit. And those 4 weapons have to be used to cap run space. And so in order to create space, we have to neutralize and win that back in one of those 4 areas. So that's how R4 can really be used with the flex bone and wing tee, is it really allows you to accelerate your ability to process the post-snap world in the run space and sequentially link your plays together to protect it, that's what makes the wing tee so good. I mean, Tubby Raymond wrote the Bible on the wing team offense, I believe, and that book's awesome. And really R4 has a lot of principles from the weak tee offense, because it's a sequential progression play calling offense where one thing protects the other. And so that's what we're trying to teach coaches, the ability to do that within any offense.
Okay. Yes, I do. Yeah, I see similarities between the two. And you're right. I have the wing tee Bible on my bookshelf. I'm sure you have it in all those books right back there. I read it like once an off season, just because you're right. It makes you think, if then.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really good. And like I said, I'll run the wing tee, but I think that's a good manual for guys to look into if they're looking how to learn, football and play calling. Very sound.
Yep. All right, coaches. He's already talked. Coach has talked about his books, his system, and everything. So I am dropping those in the chat right now. You just put out an audio version, didn't you?
Yeah, I would, everybody's like, you need to do an audio book and do those books in audio. And I put it off for a long time. So I thought it would be pretty easy, just sitting down and you just read the book, right? It was a monster. I mean, it was a lot of work, and I was like, this thing better do well for me to do another one, because to have to edit anytime you sniff or sniffle or breathe, I mean, it's just picks everything up. You got to edit it all out. And I didn't want to pay an actor because it cost too much to do it. So I did it myself, and I'm glad it's done. I'll just say that, but it is available.
And you can find that again in the chat. I've gotten a lot of these questions, and coaches, if you have any questions, put them in the chat, because that's why we're here. But a lot of coaches have reached out and said, hey, I love the R4. I'm just not a high school coach. I'm a middle school coach. I'm a youth coach. Is R4 something I can run at that level?
Yeah, and again, it's an operating system, and so it accelerates any offense you run. So whatever offense you're running at whatever level, it's going to allow you to accelerate that. I think the thing about the junior high level and in the lower youth ball levels, it's really more about fundamentals. I mean, you have to have and we go into that on the R4 system online. We go into our how we code drills and how we label and build progressions on that. But I really think at the lower levels, I mean, it's about teaching the game of football from a one-on-one level, but really it's about fundamentals, about your steps, about leverage, about simple throwing and catching, ball security. I think those are what you need to hammer home there.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Good question, Coach Carter. Mark Carter asked, do you need studs to be successful in the R4?
No, I think studs are great. I think so. Again, R4 allows you to take what you have, your talent level, whatever it is, and it gives you a process and a checks and balances system to make sure you are putting whatever you have in the best position to win. And that's really, it allows me to go to sleep at night a lot better, because I can look myself in the mirror, and as a staff, we can all look at ourselves in that room after a loss. And we can know, what, we did our job as coaches. We put together a plan that put our talent level, because we can evaluate. That's the thing about, it's so this game of football, if you don't have a process to grade your talent and process what you have and measure it, I mean, that's the biggest issue, is how do you watch a play and measure what you're seeing with the scout team that you're going to get, or with the scout, with the defense that you're scouting. And so that's why we developed it, was because, you can say number 55, the middle linebacker, is their best player, but based on what? It's all your opinion. So if we don't have common frames of reference, if we don't have a way to measure, movement and a way to code it, not coach it. And so I think that's what R4 does. It just gives you ability to see the game in a different way and measure it, so you can make sure you're putting your players in the best situation to create space.
Okay. And I know if you have the Jimmies and Joes, anything's better, right?
Well, it is, because, you can create more space in a shorter amount of time, and that's the limits, right? I mean, it's space, time, and talent. So the better my talent, the more space I can cover, or the more space I can create, and I can do it in a shorter amount of time, or I can increase time with my blocks, or increase time with my quarterback's, escapability. So that's why it's better. And as a coach, you have to understand those constraints and how to work within them. And I think that's what R4 does. It allows you to measure, how much space and time that you have at your disposal based on your talent level, and piece together the puzzle faster before the season's played. And I think, but when I first became a coordinator and didn't have the complete R4 built, it took me longer to put the puzzle pieces together. And that's what I love about high school football, is every year the pieces are different, and the puzzle's going to, and the picture of the puzzle is going to look different. And I enjoy doing that, in that challenge where we can't recruit, like in college or NFL, we can't draft or recruit, guys to fit our puzzle, so I think that's the benefit of it.
Okay. Well, I have a couple of questions also. 8-man. I know a lot of coaches probably reached out to you and talked about R4 and the 8-man. Coach Ben in the chat says, we're 8-man. We have 4 receivers on the routes. Is it better to have 1 rhythm, 2 reads, and 1 rush, or 1 rhythm, 1 read, and 2 rushes?
Yeah, I think you could have both. Just for example, in our concepts in 11-man football, there's concepts where we'll have, 2 rhythms, and there's some we'll have 1. And, it just depends on the space you're trying to create. If your protection can't hold up as long, or they're bringing a lot of blitzes, then you might need 2 rush routes and only 1 vertical rhythm in a read. So I think you don't want to fit yourself into one corner. I think you might need 2 different families of concepts and have both based on what you're trying to attack and what the limits of your offensive.
Okay, and going on that 8-man, let's do something else. I have a lot of coaches that reach out. They're getting into coaching, specifically flag football. That's where the youth kids are going and everything like that. Can you use the R4 in just flag football, where it's really not, fundamentals of tackling and everything like that, but can you put the R4 system in place at that level?
Yeah, it's still space and time. You just got to make sure when you're coaching your flag football that your quarterback, at least from a high school perspective, coach's perspective, I want to make sure that quarterback is operating within a realistic timeline. I know some of those 7-on-7 tournaments, they have a 4-second clock, and that's just not reality. If our quarterback hasn't thrown the ball in 2.6 in that, or he's not released the ball in 3 seconds, then I am not very happy. So I think you absolutely can, because it's still learning how to process space and then matching it up with the time of route breaks and the drops. So we use it all the time in our 7-on-7 in practice, and if we can video our competitions, we use it as well.
Okay, all right. Now, going away from the passing and everything real quick, protection. A lot of coaches talk about, hey, I want to do this, but I'm afraid of passing the ball because of protection. What are your thoughts on protection? Like, do you have a favorite kind of protection, or do you use them all? And how does that fit into the R4?
Yeah, you can't live life scared, man. Spread it out and throw it around. Let's go. Now I understand that coaches pain, especially when you're a head coach, it becomes a little different. Turnovers, a little bit different when it's your name on the dotted line for the season. So I can understand that. I think what you have to do if you're worried about your protection is you have to know what your offensive line can do, but there's ways to protect your protections. You can formation your way to create more protection or more time. You can do different types of pocket movement protections to increase your timeline. But I think the thing that coaches misses most is that they think a full field read requires a quarterback to read 5 guys. And it's actually scientifically impossible for a quarterback to go through a 5-scan post-snap read, because a saccadic scan, a scan path from point A to point B, takes about 0.4 of a second, which is the equivalent to a hitch step up in the pocket. So what that means is that if you take a standard 5-step drop from under center and gun and you're at 1.8 seconds, that is the first throw that can be made. All right. So typically quarterbacks are locked onto one space on the drop to that point. So that's one read. And then when you reset up, that's 0.4 of a second more. So you're at 2.2. So that's your second read. That's your second visual scan. Then if you reset up again, you're at 2.6. That's your third visual scan. That's your third read. And if you haven't released the ball at 2.6, you're going to be in that 3-second window, that limit. And most protections will have broken down by that point if you're just talking about a basic 5 to 6-man protection. So I would encourage coaches to live in a 3-progression world and then teach the release phase to buy time. So I think a lot of guys miss the opportunity there. You have to teach your quarterback how to gap escape. And there's about 4 primary gap escapes quarterbacks need to make. And we talk about that on the system. And that increases the timeline, which buys yourself time, which the defense does not want. So I think that's an undercoached part of the process, gap escapes. And that allows you to bring that 4th and 5th receiver online. So there's some things you can do there to work around pass protection deficiencies. You can do more 6 or 7-man protection. But I think the way you construct your concepts and the way you teach in R4 allows a quarterback to stay ahead of the defense because he's reading the reality with those accelerators.
I have to say, pardon my French, but shit, man, you're very smart.
I've devoted a lot of time to one thing. And
I know.
I can't do much else. I'm not very good at golf. I'm not a good handyman of the house, but I study a lot of football. So everybody has good at something. Yeah.
No, that was unbelievable because everything you said is right. I mean, if you go back and you watch film, even if you're not using the same language, like timing it out, but nobody gets through all 5 progressions. Right. If you do, you've got a stud of an offensive line, or you got one of those like Mike Vick quarterbacks back there that can just make time all they want. So
Well,
I love what you're saying about, three
I
progressions.
guess I should clarify that you can't do a 5 progression scan in the pocket. I mean,
Yeah.
that's it, just the way the saccadic scans work in the biology of your eyes, it's next to impossible. So you can do it, like you said, if you have you can create time with the protection of the line, or you can escape the pocket.
Yes. All right. I'm just thinking about that, how it would, I don't know. All right. So, a lot of coaches are asking plays, like how many plays are you bringing in a game? And then how many are you actually calling? Do you have one of those giant play sheets that you see the NFL guys and you're calling a select few, or is it like a Mike Leach, kind of like this thing right here? Or are you somewhere in between?
I got the Denny's menu, man. That all-star grand slam with the extra side of French toast. No, no, I bring a lot fewer plays now than I have earlier in my career, because once again, R4 allows me, it creates versatility with simplicity. So I think when you understand R4 and you get into the weeds of it, you can understand how to manipulate space and time with just the tweaking of one route, and create a whole different concept within original concepts. So we talk about progression platforms and adapt or die. And those platforms are there to allow a coach to take a core concept and build his answers similar to a wing T style of run play within the same concept. What you do when you fill out those 4 phases of a progression platform, you have a rhythm phase, a read phase, a rush, and a release phase within a core concept, you create an all-weather concept. And that's what I'm looking for. I want to run concepts that have answers built within that same concept, so I can carry 3 to 4 plays in the game, but really I got 12. That's the goal. And I think once I was able to start doing that, a better job of that, we became better with our adjustments, and our kids understood the adjustments better. You get into week 5, 6, 7, they're making those changes before you can even get it out. And now you can start turning that flexibility over to them. After you call the base play, it's kind of like Mike Leach does. He'll say, think about, he'll call his play and say, think about this, think about this check. Start, once they have that foundational understanding and the language and the process, you can start, taking the handcuffs off and allow them to be more free to make the decisions on their own.
Okay. I like that. Now, Coach Murphy has a question. The hard deck, is it adjustable within the season? Like during the season starts, is like, this is the hard deck and it's staying that throughout all games, or is it adjustable game to game?
Yeah, well, I think I don't know if it's adjustable game to game, because your personnel is not going to change. So what you have to do is you have to be able to calculate the vertical value of your receivers, and that's one of the things you should be doing now in the offseason. So, for example, we just took our kids out and we had them run 15-yard starts from a receiver stance, and so we video it with the drone and we measure those times. And what we're looking for is what's their vertical distance that they can gain in 1.8 seconds, because that's the rhythm phase of the timeline. That's the first point we can make a throw vertically. So what we want is we calculate the vertical value based on the distance they can get to at 1.8 seconds. So, for example, the average high school kid is going to be at 7 yards in 1.8 seconds. And that's going to be, well, I say average, that's going to be your slightly below average. Like most of your kids on your team should be able to get 7 yards in 1.8 seconds. If not, they need to be moved to offensive line. Okay. All right. So that's why we base the hard deck at 7 yards, because that's the minimum distance a receiver's got to be able to get in 1.8 seconds. Your good receivers in high school are going to get around 8 yards, 8.5, maybe 9. And your really good ones are going to get 10 or more. So, for example, if you want to take an NFL relation at that, Cooks, the receiver for the LA Rams, he was with the Patriots before there. He can get 12 yards in 1.8 seconds in 7 steps. So his vertical value, the stress he places in the space that he creates in 1.8 is ridiculous. So the more vertical value you get, the higher your hard deck goes. Okay, think of the receiver. Okay, the hard deck is a Top Gun term, right? And thank God we got Top Gun 2 coming out. So we can reintroduce the hard deck to a whole new generation of players, because, I'd say this, to the players the last couple of years, like, hey, you guys seen Top Gun? And they're like, what are you talking about, right? So anyway, the hard deck, Maverick flew below the hard deck, and that is a frame of reference in aviation to keep the fighter pilots out of the range of surface-to-air missiles, right? And so think of your receivers as those surface-to-air missiles. The higher their range, the more deadly they are to those planes. So the planes have to fly higher. And that's what we're trying to do there. So if you have a receiver that has a vertical value of 12 yards and 7 steps at 1.8 seconds, then that's a high range surface to air missile. So the hard deck line is going to be pushed up to 12 for him. So that means that if that DB is below 12 yards, he's now in range to get beat deep. So that's the analogy. And I don't know if that makes sense, but so that hard deck's going to fluctuate based on the receiver that is lined up over that defender. The average is yards. So
that makes sense. Now I got to ask, man, the hard deck, that was in your very first book, right?
Right.
When you were writing that book, did it just come to you about using the hard deck because of Top Gun? Because I love that phrase, and I know you're a huge Top Gun fan.
Yeah. I'm a huge any kind of movie fan. So any kind of analogy I can make with movies, I'm going to do it. But no, I don't know exactly where the epiphany came from. We were just watching a lot of film, and we understood about frames of reference and pattern recognition and intuition, the ability to process and make predictions of future cannot be done without a frame of reference. So we knew we needed something that was a horizontal frame of reference that allows us to communicate where vertical space advantage is. And so that's where it came into play.
I just love it, man. I love how you use pop culture as well. That's amazing. All right. Coach Young wants to know, hey, listen, how do you get your head coach to buy into the R4 when he doesn't understand it or doesn't believe in it, or he just has like a set way of doing things? But you as an offensive coordinator know, hey, this could help the whole program. What are some selling tips or points that he could use to help that?
The best way to do it is get it and do it, and just don't tell them, because it's all mental, right? I mean, it's all internal, right? So, for example, one of my quarterbacks went to University of Northern Iowa and set a ton of records in high school using R4. And so he set the single season all-time, I think, passing record for a freshman his first year up there, and was on slate for a bunch of awards. And so I talked to his offensive coordinator at the time, and he said, man, I've never had a kid that could process stuff this well this early. And so I called my quarterback and said, hey, what are you doing up there, man? He's like, I'm just using R4 in my head. It's all just internal. So I guess using that story to tell that coach, if you can't convince your head coach, you can still use it. You can, I know a lot of guys that can't convince their staff to buy into it. So they just use those parts to game plan their position and game plan the job, the job requirements that they're supposed to fulfill on a game plan, or as they offer up suggestions, they're just R4ing it essentially. So that's probably the best way. And then when you start having success, you can just tell them, hey, we've been using R4.
So essentially what you're saying is ask for forgiveness, never for permission.
Yeah. I mean, there's videos out there. I mean, I would, give him the book, see if he'll be interested. If he doesn't want to read, give him the audio book, and there's a lot of podcasts out there, and there's some things. I mean, ultimately, really what you're going to find is that the best time to mention this to coaches is at the end of a painful experience. So after a big loss, after a tough season, is when people are more open to change. When the pain exceeds the pain of change, that's when you are more likely to be open to looking at something different.
No, I like it. And hey, the books are in the chat. You can use the interviews that we've done. This is our third or fourth interview. I mean, I just love talking ball with you, man.
Third, I think. Yeah, no, it's always awesome, man.
All right. Coach Barrett has a question. What's the most successful concept you've seen with the 3 high safeties?
Yeah. Okay. So we did a deep dive into 3 high safety last offseason because I was looking, okay, what's coming? And so I'm always trying to stay ahead of what the defense is doing. So I knew that the 3 high safety defense is something that's going to be seen at our level soon. And we're already seeing some of it. So we did a deep dive on Iowa State's season. And so what we discovered was that in the 3 high safety defense, the number one thing is your running back. You have to have the ability to use your running back within your concepts. Your running back, you have to be able to put them on different routes and get on mismatches into space underneath the hard deck and on linebackers because they're short in the box. The biggest mistake we saw teams make against Iowa State is just taking vertical shots downfield and just base protection. So you have to bring in protections that use a puller, and you got to be heavy with play action. So I think, again, if I had to boil it down to 3 things, number 1, you got to use your running back in the passing game. Number 2, you have to use play action protections because a lot of times you get 4-man boxes And if you're a spread team with no tight end, you can pull a guy and still be sound in your protection. So I've seen some good protections, and we installed one of them where you can pull a guard and play fake your back across with the pull. So it looks kind of like a one back power play, but you take your back and he continues on in the flat. And that triggers that star middle safety and those apex players. I mean, because they fly in the box. I mean, that's the weakness of that, or I shouldn't say weakness, but it's built around showing a 4 or 5 man box, and then next thing you know, there's 7. So you got to use that against them. So you got to use those play action protections to get those guys to suck in, and that opens up space on the exterior or even vertically down the field with that middle safety. And then the last thing that you have to do is you have to use pocket movement protections. So OU does some great jobs with their boot pin stuff. And so any kind of movement protections to extend the timeline to allow that space to kind of sort out is very beneficial against the 3 safety.
Okay. Great answer, man. Great freaking answer. Where was it? I saw another one coming up. So again, coaches, if you haven't already, if you're just joining us, we just cracked 100. I am Coach Ron McKie. This is Coach Dub Maddox. We're talking R4. If you have any questions, put them in the comments and chat. Also, coaches, if you think someone could benefit from this, go ahead and share it. Bring those other coaches in, get the conversation going, because this is freaking amazing. We have, all right, one is from Coach Nick. Have you been watching any let me phrase that again, XFL, and what are your thoughts on the league?
Yeah, I love it because it gives me something to watch on the weekends with my son, other than basketball. So I've enjoyed the heck out of it. I really enjoy watching, Hal and June Jones and those guys. I'm seeing the run and shoot stuff and the spread stuff has been very cool. The thing that I think the big glaring thing that you're seeing is just the level of quarterback play and just, how it just off it is, which, I think, R4 can help some of these guys. I really do. So, I'm watching it from that perspective, just, my mind, I wish I could get down there and help some of these guys, but yeah, I've enjoyed the heck out of it, man.
All right. I'm glad you brought up June Jones, because I know I have been taking a deep dive in everything I've been doing in the run and shoot, because that was my first love. I know, Coach Clark, you talked to him down in Alabama a couple of weeks ago with the run and shoot. Mm-hmm. Can I take the R4 and apply it to the run and shoot? And if so, how would that look just at a glance? Yeah,
well, in R4, we talk about in adapter dive, for example, we go through the route families of routes. And what you'll find is that for example, in the rhythm route family, there's 5 base rhythms. You have the seam, the fade, the post, the corner, and the cross route. Well, that's the vertical rhythm. All those are best thrown at 1.8 seconds. And there's a snap variation of all those routes that attack horizontal space. So, for example, the snap variation of the corner route is the quick out, or the speed out. I'm sorry, the 6-step speed out. The snap variation of a rhythm post is a speed dig. Snap variation of a cross route is a spot. Snap variation of a seam is a sit, and the snap variation of the fade is the trace route, or the fallout, the back shoulder, whatever you call it. So that is our run and shoot, right? It's route break adjustments based on what the cap of the defense is telling you. So I think R4, it gives you the verbal and visual frames of reference to accelerate, what the quarterbacks have to do and the receivers have to do to read and evaluate space. It reduces the amount of reps you need to just get this, subconsciously. It accelerates it because you're able to communicate and coach that feedback loop faster, so they can learn faster through failure, because now you have a language and a process and frames of reference that get you and your quarterback on the same page of finally knowing what is open. I mean, that's the number one thing you got to get on the same page with. How do you define it? Most people can't. So
you're absolutely right. The last time we talked, you told me, hey, ask your quarterback this simple question and you'll realize where there's a disconnect. How do you know someone is open?
Yeah.
And when I was like, Dub's full of shit. He doesn't know what he's talking about, but I'm gonna do it anyways because I love him. And I asked, and it really was an eye opener because he couldn't really tell me. Yeah. It was like, there's grass, or when I think he's open and stuff like that. And I was like, oh my God, there really is a disconnect between what I'm saying and teaching and what he hears.
So let's reverse engineer as coaches. What's the number one goal of the offense? It's to move the ball down the field. It's to essentially find what is open, whether it's run or pass or whatever you're running. We've got to, everyone in this room and on this team have to be on the same mind and the same page defining that. So, for example, we talked about the SFL. There was a game 2 weeks ago where Dallas, Landry Jones, before he got hurt, he threw I think he had three
That
or four.
curl. Yeah.
Yeah. So he had one on the post curl on the backside of Y cross. And so, it looked like you could drive a semi truck through that window. Right. So I see the play and I'm like, man, that looked open. And then you slow it down and you put the cap process of R4 behind it. And you can see easily that linebacker that retraced back and picked it off, you can see based on his hip angle. And then you would obviously have to measure his closure ability, which that can be done through watching scout film, or you can even evaluate that in the game. When you put those two components within that look, you would have known that that is not open and that is essentially capped. So, I put that video on Twitter just because I was curious to see what coaches saw. And there was 47 different answers of what happened. There was 47 different opinions on what went wrong and how to fix it. And that is the world we live in, that you've got to figure out how to clean up in your staff and with your team. You got to eliminate that confusion, because that's going to cause you a ton of headaches and it's going to lose you ball games.
Yeah. So you did that as a social experiment, huh?
Because I thought it was open too. When you watch it in real time, like, man, how did that happen? Because it was wide open. And I'm looking. Well, first I'm looking. Well, was it his drop? Did he drop too long? And he dropped right on time. He took a quick 5 reset. He got it out at about 2.4 seconds, which that's the time. And it was right as the top of the curl break. He wasn't late on the throw. It was on a line. And then you look at the hip angle and then the closure ability of that guy. And it was capped. And so what it does is it allows you now after the game to sit down with Landry in the film room and take him through that cap process. And now he can get on the same page and see, okay, I get it now. And what it does, that creates a mental model. So that experience, while as painful as it was, it's less likely to happen again, because you were able to walk him through and give verbal and visual frames of reference on what covered or capped looks like. And so that's what we're finding with R4, is that we don't have to be Peyton Manning and throw 28 interceptions our rookie year before we find out what open looks like. He still has the all-time single season interception record in the NFL, but he's a great Hall of Famer, one of the best of all time, right? Well, he took all those failures to finally learn, okay, the speed of the game, the speed of a route, and what open is. We don't have that luxury as coaches and we don't give our kids that luxury to throw that many picks to learn from that failure. So we need a system that can accelerate our ability to learn from those failures faster. And that only happens with a common language and a process to define what open is. And that's what R4 does for a coach.
I agree with Todd Place. My man Todd, he says, it's kind of ridiculous how quick you answer every question and how in-depth and perfect every answer is. It's not fair to sound that smart.
Like I said, I'm not good at a lot of things. At least I can say I know a little bit of something.
All right. Gun to your head. You can only choose one of your 3 books for a coach just starting out. Which one would you recommend just starting out?
Probably Adapt or Die, because it builds a bridge between the other two. Would be my first recommendation.
All right. There you go, Coach Jones. Coach Greenfield Coach, I don't know if you're just joining. We did talk about the wing tee and how to put R4 into it, but he wants to know, if he uses the R4, can he use it for the pass, or would he just have to use the halo and the personnel run accelerators?
No, you can absolutely use it for the pass. The wing tee, most of your plays are going to be, play action shots, be boots, be counter boots, and things like that. So in R4, we talk about how the beauty of those kinds of plays, it extends the timeline. So we teach how to fit the R4 progression within a boot or naked or deep shot timeline. So it'll bring both of those online for you.
Okay. All right. Coach Fast wants to know, what's your favorite 5-step concept? Is it mesh?
If it's man, I love it. Favorite 5-step, it really depends on the coverage. We do a weak side boundary flood variation. I like, that's really good. That's versatile. It's kind of like it's an adjustment off the West Coast shallow drive concept. So that's one of my favorites if we're talking 5-step.
Okay. Good enough. I just saw it. Coach Barrett wants, how would you R4, let's say, the go concept, the run and shoot go concept? That's the number 1 vert, 2 seam read, 3 is like straight to the flat.
Okay. So basically I would teach that as a rhythm side progression. So what that means is you have 2 rhythms and you have a rush route. And all those are essentially in the same scan space. So you can drop back, you can take a punch 3 step drop, and that'll give you about 1.8 seconds of time. And you're really, from my understanding, you're reading kind of that apex defender and how he reacts to the flat route, and you're trying to bang that seam on the other side of him. So I think you rhythm that. So if you hit the last step of your drop and you haven't thrown that seam or that flat based on that defender, then I would reset to the backside with some read route comments. So it could be a dig or a comeback or something to the backside, and then put my tail back on a check to that side as well. So now I'm getting a full field scan.
Okay. And actually that brings me up to another one, talking about the adjustments. How would you use R4 if you were doing like the Baylor type system where they just sent him in a man deep and ran like a option route? How would you put that on top of it?
Well, can you explain that a little bit deeper?
Okay, so essentially what they did, let's say we got 11 personnel and you got an H-back to the right, the twins are to the left. They would do 7-man protection, and essentially they're going to choice route the slot. So he has a vert or a post, and everybody else just runs kind of like 10 yards and just sits to hold their man. And it's kind of like a one-on-one isolation.
Yeah. So depending on the depth of the break of that choice, I don't know what depth. So essentially, you could put a rhythm and read into that one route, because that route essentially could be hit on rhythm based on what happens, and then you could hitch up and then still stay on it for a read, based on if he wants to dig it or curl it or whatever. And then I would rush to a check down and then release. So I would put the rhythm and read into that one route, if that's how they're doing it.
That's nice. Because that was a big one. Like, hey, a lot of people like that Art Browse offense type stuff, and they wanted to know, could you put the R4 on top of that? And that was one of their questions.
Sure. Yeah. No, you definitely could. As long as you understand the timing of R4 and the DNA of routes, you'll start to learn how to work the language and the progression within that. Just like, I didn't know that concept. You just told me, so that's how I'd fit it in there. And any coach can do that with the materials.
Okay. Coach Juan just purchased your audio book. He's got a long bus ride to a track meet tomorrow, so he's going to be listening to your silky smooth voice.
I appreciate that, man.
Coach Paul wants to know, could you expand more on the R4 with a boot? If we had a fade or a post corner from one, fullback shoot route to the flat, backside drag, and just talk us through the boot concept with R4 put on top of it.
So in the boot concept, you're extending the timeline, right? Because you're breaking contained in the pocket. So when the quarterback, his first step, so let's say we're on the left hash running that play. All right. So we're faking inside zone or outside zone to the left, and then we're booting to the right. So the timeline begins on my first step out of that play fake. So when I start to break contain, so that's the first step of the drop. Okay. So that's how you can essentially bring your drops into boots. It's like, so when I fake and when I first break contain, when my right foot hits the ground, that's one. Okay. So that's my first step. So essentially now we teach our quarterback to rhythm that post corner or that fade route, or we run a K route. And you can rhythm a double move route or a deeper route within that boot concept, because you're extending the timeline. So it doesn't have to be just a straight stem route, if that makes sense. Okay. You could rhythm a comeback, 20, 25 yards, because you're extending the timeline. So the third step out of the fake, that's the rhythm phase. So when you hit your third step, when that right foot hits the ground on his third step, that is when the rhythm phase terminates. So if I was looking at a post corner, if I hadn't thrown it, if it was capped in that third step, I would go down to the drag. I have to have the drag thrown by the fifth step. That's the read phase. And then I would take 2 more steps. I would be at 7 steps. That is the rush phase, where I'd look for the flat route. Okay. So I would go rhythm, read, rush. And by the 7th step, that ball, if it hasn't thrown, then I would release, and I would tell our quarterback to run. Now, the caveat to that is this: when you come out of the play fake and you feel immediate pressure in your face, okay, if you feel the rush, you throw the rush. That's how we teach our quarterback to now flip it and now go low to high. Okay. So if you feel the rush, you're throwing the rush, because you don't have time to now go through a full field high to low read if that linebacker you're supposed to fake on the naked boot didn't buy it. Right. And so we tell our quarterbacks, never take a sack on naked. All right. You should never take a sack. You should know that flat route you're safety net. So, like in high school, if you throw the ball away and there's not a receiver there, that's a loss of down it's the worst penalty in playing football. mean, so you got to make sure quarterbacks know, hey, when you come out, you're going to have a route in the flat. So if you need to just get rid of it, bail and get rid of it and throw it in the flat at his feet, and let's live to play another down. So that's some of those key components. So at the naked boot, you need to make sure your guy understands. So feel the rush, throw the rush. Otherwise, when I come out, if he comes out that fake and he has time, there's not immediate pressure, then he knows he has time to read high to low.
Okay. All right. That's good. Now let's continue with that. Coach McKenzie wants to know, I'm a cornerback. I drop back. My foot hits the back, 3-step, 5-step, whatever. That rhythm is capped.
Yeah.
How he knows what to go to is he reading like the same kind of cap structure for the read progression, or is there something different between the rhythm and the read? How do you do that?
All about the cap. I mean, we make this game too hard.
I agree.
Once your quarterback understands the cap concept and he knows how to read hip angles, he can see patterns and see things that no one else can. So to answer my question, what you've got to make sure your quarterback does, if he hits the last step of his drop, he needs to know just before he hits the last step if the rhythm is capped or uncapped. I mean, what we try to train our quarterbacks is you really need to know by the second to last step of your drop if that's capped or uncapped, right? And so you think about it, if it's 1.8 seconds on the timeline from the snap to the last step of the drop, most quarterbacks, they don't use that 1.6 seconds. We call it the golden 1.6. They don't use that to accelerate their decision-making if that rhythm's capped. I mean, you would not believe, once you understand the cap process, by the time a quarterback catches the ball in shotgun and takes the first step of his drop, you should have about a 60 to 70% probability of knowing whether that's capped or not by the first step, if you know what to look for. Most guys don't know what to look for. So by the second step, we should have confirmation whether we're throwing or not. And then what that allows us to do is when I hit the third step, my eyes can already be to the read. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we're staying one step ahead essentially of our progression with those accelerators. So some things to think about when you watch your quarterbacks on the film, you'll see our guys when they get really good is they're hitting that second to last step. And then that's when their eyes go to the read. And they're staying one step ahead of that progression. So they have more scan time for the read route.
Okay. I like it. All right. We got another question right here. I know you talk about this inside your system because I have seen it and it is very, very, very good. How does the R4 work within the split field coverage world of defenses?
Easily. I mean, it's all about capped and uncapped space. So, I mean, here's the thing, and this is why it was created. Like, coverage is really irrelative. I mean, it's just a starting point for coaches and it's just a starting point for quarterbacks just to kind of know where the weakness is. But R4 allows you to read the reality of coverage. So, for example, just because a team is playing cover 3 doesn't mean those 3 deep zones are going to be capped. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you shouldn't be able to throw a vertical fade route into cover 3, but that corner might be below that hard deck line. Post snap, he might not be bailing, and we might be within that 4-yard cushion rule in his hip ankle square. So the whole point to that split field coverage is it works just like with any coverage because we're reading the reality of space. So if it's uncapped, we'll look at that space first and then we'll reset to the next. I think with split field coverage, I think the things that I like to do against it is I like to attack the man side. So I like to make sure, like if I'm in 2x2 and they're playing, split field cover 40 to that man side, I want to put my best receiver at that Z. I think a lot of guys, they think that they have to, play a kid at one position on one side of the field and they can't handle that movement and learning. And I've done it at the lowest levels of football and I've done it at the highest levels of high school football. You absolutely can teach a kid how to line up left or right and learn different positions. It's real easy to say, hey, go play Z and run a fade. So I think, you need to, attack the man side first. I think bringing crossers across from the zone side to the man side is very good as well. Bringing a shallow, bringing a cruise, bringing a cross route. So that's some things we look at trying to do it in 2x2 split field coverage.
Okay. Great stuff, man. Because I know you dive into that when you're breaking down the coverages and things like that inside one of your modules in the website.
Think about, Saban has 17 different variations of cover 1. I mean, how's my quarterback going to go out there in 3 seconds know which type of cover 1 he's seeing? Like, hey, is the vertical space capped or uncapped? Okay, it is. Great. Here's my read route. Is it capped or uncapped? Great. No. Okay, let's go the rush route. Okay, capped or uncapped? No. Okay, then
get out of dodge.
Get out of dodge, release. So we make it too hard.
All right. A question from Coach Nick. Do you ever run into height issues with quarterbacks seeing over the OL and being able to see cap or reading linebackers?
Yes, I've had short quarterbacks my whole career. It's like that's all I did. Yes, someday I'm going to get a tall guy, but no, I've had a ton of experience with that. So some things that you do is we do some. I think you have to, like, on your rhythm side, you want to make sure the man side of your protection's on your rhythm side. So if you use a man slide protection, making sure the side he's looking at first, the rhythm side, is set to that quarterback's side, because that creates lanes. It creates passing lanes. Man protection creates passing lanes. So that's one. Two, we allow him on some intermediate game to take a quick 5-step drop. So allowing him in gun to take quick 5 and allows him to get more depth to see for those shots. So that's some things. And then also, we use some different pocket movement protections and do some dash protection to move the pocket and get them out. For example, I think one of the years we had a real short quarterback, really good. So we'd be on the left hash and 2x2. We're playing odd teams. Well, those odd teams, they'll play that 4-4-eye, right? And they'll bring that dog linebacker's apex to the field. So on his roll, so if we're throwing like a rhythm concept to the right, he can kind of see pre-snap that C gap, is unprotected because that dog's apex, right? So he would like catch the ball and he would half roll, 3-step drop to the right, and it would get him outside and it would clear up space to the field. And then he would reset to. So that's some things you can look at if you have an open gap, with your detached receivers, you can have him half roll on some of your drops.
Okay, I like that.
You'll stay on your normal timeline.
I like that. All right, Coach Mike Turso says, important question, when are you coming to the Great Northwest?
Now that coronavirus is hitting man, everything's gonna be online. Planet of the Apes is coming, man. It's yeah. Sorry, Mike.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try,
buddy.
But it depends. I might have to be in a full like hazmat suit.
Contagion.
Yeah.
Oh, I tell you what, man. I'm kind of a germaphobe in my classrooms and things like that.
Yeah.
But I'm also a sadist, so I watched Contagion again.
Yeah.
While this is going on, and the whole time I'm watching, I'm like, Ron, why the hell are you watching this? You're freaking out. But I can't pull away. I'm just weird. Yeah, Coach Vass agrees with you about moving the wide receivers. He said there's nothing more irritating than watching an offense stick their best guy at the number one receiver in trips because they only play one place.
Yeah, when a defensive guy says that, you better write it down. Put it gold.
Especially Coach Vass, man. He's freaking genius. All right, coaches, we're coming toward the end. So if you have any more questions, please put them in the chat. I am going to drop Coach's stuff again. If you want to do it, I can't say enough good things about it. First off, your Twitter, it's awesome. Your gift game is on point. Like, you are who I aspire to be when I'm throwing up gifts.
Yeah.
Your books are there, that website, and your website. It's unbelievable. Coach Martin wants to know a little bit more info about the summit. Spencer and I are looking to drive 15 hours back to Oklahoma. So the R4 Summit, I know you have that.
The last 5 years we have an R4 Summit in Tulsa every year, and so basically it's mostly for members. But if you're not a member, you're more than welcome. And we get together each year and we just try to talk about trends, and we share the stuff that we're going to experiment with in the upcoming season, and we share ideas. One of the formats we have with the coaches that are coming is every coach will get up, and a coach on their staff will get up and give like a 20-minute TED talk on their best. And so they're going to explain the best thing they do at their program. And that could be anything: offense, defense, culture, off season. So that's a real good part of that. But really, it's just trying to share the advancements of R4 and share early with some of the things that we're working on, and then just problem solve. What do you guys, we have guys that, submit questions before they come. And we just want to make sure that we get them all covered. And you get a lot of good ideas. Everyone gets better. I get better hearing from other guys, and the camaraderie is really great. So if anybody wants to come to that, that's you can go to our website, r4footballsystem.com, click on clinics, and you can sign up for the summit. It's in May. It's in conjunction with our spring ball, so you'll get to see us practice and see how we do some of this stuff with our players. And so love to have you guys out.
Okay, awesome, man. Michael, if you want to know how you use R4 in a youth program, we talked about that earlier in the interview. I don't know if you came in late. Once this is over with, the replay will be up. You can check that out. Coach Greenfield, do you prefer to use a digit or West Coast verbiage system?
Neither.
Hey, I love that answer, man. I love it.
I want I think language is the key to any great culture, right? Any great business, it's the common language. And I firmly believe in brevity codes. And that's the system that the military uses to say a lot with a little and paint pictures. And pictures carry more information and tell stories.
Yep.
Stories is how we share information. And so I like to use names that create pictures that I can attach a bunch of content or information on. So that's the brevity code for us, and R4 is rooted in that. And so that's why the West Coast, it's wordy. It's like think of when computers were coded back when they started to, before Microsoft came in and developed the best coding, or Apple. It was all DOS, and it was real wordy, and it was mechanical. And so I think of that as the play calls. The number system, it doesn't really paint a picture. It doesn't allow my kid to understand the whole picture of the concept. I want them to know the why we're calling it and the stretches that it creates. And then I think that the excessive words of the West Coast, there's easier ways to pack on all that verbiage with a better structured of language. And so that's why I prefer neither.
Okay. Awesome. Coach Kuntz, first off, welcome. And I asked Coach this question: what is the best book he recommends to read first? It is Adapt or Die. It's the bridge to all three of them. Coach, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, man.
I freaking love this thing, man. And for you coaches, we have a special announcement that we're going to drop tomorrow. Okay. So you need to make sure you are on either one of our email list, because you're going to get an email, or in this group. If you want to go ahead and send it to you when we announce it, in the comments below, put hashtag R4, and I will make sure to reach out to you bright and early tomorrow morning with the announcement. It is something we've been working on for about a month now, and I am super excited about announcing it. So if you want to know that information, hashtag R4 in the comments. Thank y'all for coming. Coach, thank you again so much. And is there anything you want to plug that I haven't plugged already?
No, I want to thank the guys and their questions. It means a lot. I mean, I'm just like you. I'm just a high school coach, man. And we're just looking to find ways just to make our kids better and to make this game more enjoyable and to win football games, obviously. But I just appreciate your guys' support and coming on with your questions. We all get better when we share. So thanks for your time.
Yes. All right, coaches. Make sure to look out for that announcement. Again, hashtag R4 in the comments, and I will get to you personally in a DM or something like that. And until next time, coaches, let's continue to master the spread, score points, and have fun.